1,000 shillings. That if you have it, you know I have 1,000 shillings and I just don't have paper and ink. Who has put out that value? Central Bank. The value of that is determined by the central bank. Do we have, with that analogy, do we need now, or don't we need aspects that we can endorse to be value drivers in film, value drivers in the creative industries? Because the challenge here is, I've put together a song. Yesterday, Miss June took us through the processes of coming up with a song. I have lyrics. Do you know how hard it is to come up with melody? You know, a coherent melody that makes sense. Do you know how hard it is to come up with instrumentation that goes with that melody? So, if we were to pick, and this is now what I wanted us, because here we are talking about intellectual property, and you have said there are very many diverse components or aspects of IP. As a low-hanging fruit, what are the most available components of intellectual property that people from this audience can work with, saying, if I take advantage of this, it might lead to generation of my overall value in my product? Yes.
If I'm making a film, then I can be able to identify the various factors that I can't use as intellectual property. So in film, you have a script, you have your characters, you have costumes that come out of that. Maybe you'd have any slogans or anything you want to trademark. So those are various factors that you could use as collateral, and if you focus on that and just have a target, then it would be easy, because if you look worldwide and productions that have been made in the past, and this comes from a conversation we had yesterday in a different session on film characters, we realized that even in our supermarkets, you'll have some copyrighted work, and they will even target our local markets, so that we'll have maybe productions from, maybe even if it's Harry Potter, they make merchandise and they sell that. So for the filming, then that's what filmmakers can consider in targeting the market, having a collateral and being able to use that as a bargaining power in seeking funds.
Thank you very much. And Faith, your take on it?
I think I would just agree with her that there are various intellectual property aspects that are condensed in one, for example, a film.
Okay.
And so, as a creative, you need to take to make sure that you see to it that all of them are protected in whatever ways. If it's the script, that is copyright. If it's the name of the film, that is trademark. If there is any logo, you just make sure you protect all of them so that you can capitalize on them and maybe monetize them in whatever way that you can. Okay. So I just agree with her. With what
you agree with her?
Yeah.
The thing that I wanted us to and then we'll come to the audience is this. If we pick a film in Kenya today, and Madam Josephine has dropped for us aspects, components that we can exploit. Give me one of your favorite Kenyan film. And we had said yesterday, it's not for the sake of criticism. We are just purely using them for illustration purposes. We are not dissing anyone. Is that okay? So sitoke hapa iki kifala kunajua vile film ni noma. So any film. Yes sir. Subira. Okay? Blackmail. Black Bean. Plan B. Okay. Okay, I've not watched Subira, I've not watched Plan B. I wanted something that I've watched, you guys. Sumu. Waridi. I'm afraid I haven't watched Waridi. I want something that I've watched, something that we can connect with. Okay, Nairobi Half-Life. And let us look at what Josephine has said so that we connect with Nairobi Half-Life. What are the components of characters in Nairobi Half-Life that they have not yet exploited? Are there aspects of their characters? Are there aspects of Vile Nairobi Half-Life, the way their casts were costumed? Is there a way that they could grow a market just from the costumes of Nairobi Half-Life? That is what we are saying. So that when you're going to a bank, you're saying, through this film, we have this either joint venture with this designer, notable, or we have this understanding with this designer, for instance. So that from this film, we can put across this fashion. Why? Because those of us who watch Suit, there is that gentleman, I don't know what's his name, the Kafani lawyer, the Kafani lawyer. There's a guy who is a Kafani lawyer. That guy is actually used to push a part of the Suit collection in the US. So what components, and that's what I was asking, that these are the things that we can identify, that there is a way in your script, you can grow the economic value of your script through building your characters. Can I build characters in such a way that that character will open up for me avenues of merchandising? Can I build a costume that this costume will open up for me avenues of merchandising, so that even as I go to access credit facility, if they ask me collateral, I'm saying I have this costume as my collateral. And this costume, like you had said, either is harnessed as a trademark of the costume or the design of that costume. Am I making sense? Or I'm talking gibberish? Am I making sense? Because what we are trying to explore is, what are we missing? Because we have amazing stories. In our midst here, we have people that have been male supporting actor, best male actors. But what components are we lacking even as we go about our careers? That's what we are trying to understand, that what are the components in film? What are the different components in film that can lead to the overall value, overall economic value of film? In economics, value operates at two levels in economics. And I would wish that we can transfer that understanding of value even to film. In economics, value is direct. That if you do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, then we factor in the economies of scale in that entire process, and then we say if it arrives at this point, it's 10 shillings. That's why we were saying about standardization. That standardization will bring in this component that if we do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, then if it reaches to this point, it is worth X. That's okay? Up to that point. Tumesikizana? So we are trying to ask, what are the different moving pieces in film that we can exhaust? And even as we want to open up the floor, I want to ask one final question to the lovely lady from Kenya Copyright Board. Ulisema nisikuite Madam Copyright.
It's okay.
What are, if any, success stories that we have of people who used their copyrights that someone can emulate as a model? That you see this individual came, we harnessed the value of this copyright, so that Peter Kawa here, being an animator, someone who is producing animation, and as a customer, oh, so these are the copyright aspects of my animation. Yes, madam.
Thank you. Well, I can't really say there is one particular success story that I can pinpoint, because as I have said, the use of copyright, like for valuation, is not yet happening in Kenya. But I have known of quite a number who have sold their copyright, like assigned, and they have made a lot of money out of it.
Assigned?
Yes, like...
Okay. for the best interest of our friends, what
Yes.
is to assign copyright?
To sell.
To sell copyright.
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay.
So by sell, I mean they have sold their copyright such that they don't own copyright in that particular work anymore. And so it's like they have sold their land. It no longer belongs to them. They've been given the money. They have used it for something else.
Okay.
So that is one success story. I cannot say so-and-so, Mr. So-and-so did it, but I've seen quite a number. And so I could say that is one of them. And there's also the aspect of licensing, whereby people have licensed their works, mostly softwares, and they continue to draw income from that licensing.
Okay.
So they continue making profits or income. They make money from their creation, from their copyright. And the other one, of course, is the royalties, which I always paid through the CMOs.
Okay.
So they've also made money out of the use of their works, copyright works, through royalties.
Okay.
So there are various ways in which people have made have made a profit or benefited from their creations.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Madam Josephine?
Go back to the demonstration we had on Nairobi Half-Line.
Sure.
And in terms of coming up with the characters in the movie, in Nairobi Half-Line, I think the theme of the movie was on how life can be difficult and people are turned into crime. And we had a lead actor who was the lead of the gang. But what factors do the producers and filmmakers have in mind when they're coming up with the script? What impact do they want that to make so that this character can have an identity with its audience? In Nairobi Half-Life, I don't remember the name of that particular lead of the gang, but then was the name impactful? Is the name of the film impactful? Because these are some of the elements that can be used.
Exactly.
And then I think yesterday we discussed something to do with Mark Mende. I think the audience can connect that. I think Mark Mende has been used in a music video, and by the click of that word, at least the audience can be able to relate. Mark Mende is that bad guy, the dog.
Sure.
Reborn and etc. So that's what should be put in consideration. But on that, I'm also dying to hear from the audience and the film producers in the house to also give us their view on all of these aspects.
Thank you very much. Before we go to the film, I want us to ask us this question. I want to say something. The learned friend. Who does that make reference to? Lawyers. Who coined that phrase, the learned friend? Was it coined by lawyers? Who coined that phrase, learned friend? Shakespeare. Shakespeare coined that phrase, learned friend. In which book? Merchant of Venice. There's something that she has brought, which is very important. Even before we go to questions, I wanted to labor on it. The problem with us in the film industry and even in music, we are, even when it comes to putting together characters, we are generic. You will use a name like Mark. Mark is a name you cannot own. You'll use Philip. Philip is a name you cannot own. You'll use Jane. Jane is a name you cannot own. So if you cannot own that name cannot create for you market avenues. What art does, and if you want to take me on this, you can even watch. I love watching a lot of epic movies, epic series, because in epic, if you don't have dialogue, you have nothing. If you don't have characters, you have nothing. If you don't have plot, you have nothing. If you don't have setting, you have nothing. Now, people in Hollywood, they capitalize. They are very deliberate with coming up with a character. They are very deliberate, even the naming they give that character, a name that the company can own. or the producer of that work can own. The other day I was looking at Game of Thrones and the Dothrakis. You guys know the Dothrakis. What language do you think they speak? I used to think they speak Greek. Not knowing that that language was coined by the writers. So they own right to that language. You know, when Khaleesi, that name Khaleesi, it is owned by the writers. It is a name that has never existed. Do you know before Shakespeare existed, Romeo was a name that was never heard? Romeo. Shakespeare actually framed that name Romeo. Today we have it. And that is what, I'm very happy she brought that up. Even as you go about building or creating your work, can you be deliberate that even in these processes, these are the things you can own? If you ask someone, what is the setting of Nairobi Half-Life? Nairobi. Can they own that? So which means that is a component that cannot be commercialized. If you look at Game of Thrones, what is the setting of Game of Thrones? The King's Landing. That is purely their creation, and they own that. The 7 kingdoms, they own that. Do you know what other things have come from that just word, the 7 kingdoms? And that is what I was telling Joyce the other day, yesterday actually, that in film, there are different components of film that as a filmmaker, if you make informed choices, how do you come across? I've been attending a lot of auditions, like 300 auditions, to a point where I felt I was ugly. So the last audition I attended, we were with Peter. and it was Muntu. Was it Muntu? Yes, Muntu. And I did my all. And then I was called the waterman. When you go to some of these auditions, even this is how they put their, is it called treatment? You guys remember treatment in film? So this is how they put it. James, between 36 to 54 years. That's how they put it. So you're like, have you ever seen a James Bond that is 60 years? Have you ever? Do you think they do that by accident? The James Bond, when they were framing James Bond was someone who is in his sexual prime. So they would put a specific age. It's not even someone in their 40s. But us guys, when we are going about creating characters, we are very vague in creating characters. So we come up with characters that we cannot commercialize on. There's something that she has brought about, licensing, assigning. Can one film company license their character to another film company? Wouldn't that generate value for this other film company? Because that's what they are doing. We are not trying to copy, we are only trying to model some of their best practices. If someone is growing this character, what avenues has this character opened? What avenue, if any, does dialogue in your work open for you? And if you realize, whether you're in music, Jana, the lovely June, gave an example of Bazokizo. And I've been telling guys, these two boys have walked out on an opportunity of a lifetime. What is Bazokizo? What is Bazokizo? It is a word that was carefully crafted. Do you know today, if these two guys were to define Bazokizo, they could license Bazokizo as a word that they own to people who publish kamusis, people who publish dictionary. Do you know today in music, if Bazokizo was designed or was defined as a genre of music, do you know today they would be teaching Bazokizo at KU? Faculty of Music. We have things, but we don't know how to follow through. So at the end of the day, Bazokizo is a dance move, right? Do you know they could define that dance move and license that dance move to Faculty of Music, Department of Dance, KU? Imagine how much they could generate from that. So we have things that we are doing on a day-to-day, and you're happy, nilitwa show, nilitwa show. So umekamu perform, you only live on shows. I want to bring this back to you. We have a few minutes, and I want to open it up. Before a few minutes, there's a lady who was here, part of the panelists yesterday, who has just landed late. June, you are conversant. Is that June? I'm short-sighted. Is that June? No, I'm not short-sighted. Could someone kindly hand June a microphone? She was supposed to be part of our panelists, and I want to give you 3 minutes or 5 to give us your take on how intellectual property can be used, even in helping us access credit. Can intellectual property be a form of collateral, or are we smoking weed? Five minutes, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Maybe I got the wrong brief. I was coming to listen to you and the lovely ladies on the panel. My panel was yesterday. My name is June Gashui. I'm an IP practitioner and lawyer and performing artist, singer, songwriter. I should know better than to stand in front of a speaker, actually. So your question was about how we can use IP as collateral. And I think my colleagues here have done a good job in terms of expressing what is available in terms of the law, the legal framework or provisions. I think the only other point I would add is just the perception in terms of who we're having this conversation with. I think if we have financiers, and it would have been lovely to have some of them at this discussion as well, to ask them what is it that makes them apprehensive, what is it that makes them fear taking a chance on what it is our collective IP works have actually been able to do in terms of creating value from a monetary point of view. And I concur with Faith's point about the fact that it may not necessarily have to be us who do it as the creative, but we should have some sort of formula that can be relied upon. If you go to most of the financial institutions, because of how it has happened in the past, it is something that we can see. It's a tangible piece of property, it's a piece of land, and therefore give us your title deed. It is a car, therefore give us your logbook. But if I say here's my album or here's my movie, I should be able then to contribute to a conversation about value. Even if there's no formula that we have used yet successfully here, there are initiatives I can tell you about, different organizations who are starting to look at formulas that you can pay. You know, I mentioned Prospect IP yesterday that, you know, they charge you $400 or something like that for an interim report that sort of gives them access to your books, to your numbers, so that they can try and understand what your investment has been, what assets you have, and use as much of the data you share to apply a formula to it and hopefully generate some sort of value. And of course, because we're maybe not as mature as some of the markets in the West, we've not yet done this sufficiently enough to have a track record. So my view on that would be, if we were to sit with these financiers who are either giving us loans or using our IP as collateral or as some element of securitization, it would be to tell them, just because you have not done it before does not make it wrong. Can we sit down and find out what parameters work for you? And in place of this piece of land, is it because the government valuer valued the land at 60 million? So you trust him, but you don't trust our equivalent of the government valuer, who could potentially be Kekobo or somebody else, some other body. So I think it's a function of conversations. It's a function of us keeping better records as creatives. For those of us who are making movies, it's usually easier because there's a lot of money that you have to account for, especially if somebody is funding it. You need to know what the cost is of hiring crew, camera, casting, your actors and your extras and all of that, and even location. Everything has a cost, and that cost is what you use to say we spent X amount to make this movie. It does not mean that is the value of the movie. Some movies have made way more money than what the initial investment was. So is it a function of those two numbers? And if we kept all our receipts and we stopped running briefcase organizations, then it would be easier for somebody to come in and say, okay, what has your accountant done? Let me see your books for today. And I think that would be the challenge I would give back to us. I say us because I am also a creative, so it's a reminder to myself as well. But I said, even as an IP practitioner, these are some of the things when you ask us those questions, we look at, so where would we start other than your emotional attachment to the work? Yesterday I joked and I said my hourly rate is $1,000,000 shillings just because I think I'm awesome. And you can't tell me any different because there's no formula that we are using, yeah? But if there was a way to formalize the standard rating of my hourly rate as X, as an actress who has done stage and screen acting, so where does that place me? If I win 1 award, I'm somewhere here. If I win 3 awards, my rate should not be the same as somebody who just started. That's just fair.
Sure.
But then what is that number that we can then take to the bank? And I think that's the conversation we need to keep having.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now I want to open it. I only have a chance for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions. And yes, Karanja. Naomba mtu apatie Karanja mic. John. And yes, John.
Afternoon. I hope it is afternoon.
Afternoon.
Yes, my name is Karanja John. I'm a creator and a servant of the film industry and television. There are 3 things which are very key here, and it is a question of understanding ourselves as creatives, as producers. The other thing is understanding the government and how the two combine to create a policy. So we don't have a policy in Kenya. We've been singing the song for the longest. I think I have a daughter who I almost called policy because when we were agitating for the formation of KFC, that was when she was born. You can imagine how long it has taken. And I'll just quickly say one thing in 1 minute. If we are going to work together, I think it's high time that KFC also understood the power it has in terms of the mandate, the new mandate. There is something that is in there which is deliberately put, certify. And by certify, it means that it has the power to look at all the issues that we are talking about, from how we can be able to make all these laws to fall into one law. We have CAP 22, which is as old as the history of Kenya in terms of independence. It was formed in 1954, and you find that is about 60 years. And that is still the operating understanding in terms of the law. So let's look at policy. Let's look at how that can be the beginning element from where we can be able to create all these other conversations. The reason as to why those people in other businesses are doing well, from the lawyers to doctors to everybody else, is because they are organized, and even the Kenya, the people who tax us understand them as professionals. But for us, if you look at how we are categorized, we are called others. We are called others because we believe we are others when others are professionals. I think it's high time we sat down as creatives and organized our own shop so that we move from the kiosk, we move into a sector, and finally into, hopefully, an industry. Thank you.
And I would wish we tumalize. There's another session. But if you can do it in 30 seconds, can you do it in 30 seconds? 1 minute? Or you need 3 days? You need to do it in 2 days? 2 minutes. Okay. And then to Funge.
Thank you. It's a pity really that we are running out of time. And number two, I feel we are just talking to ourselves on some issues as opposed to having the experts here. But, you know, that's that. My name is Musyoki. Recently, a few years, gotten into the film production industry. I have a question for Kekobo. I come to you to copyright my film, my song, but there's a huge disclaimer at the back of your certificate. Please note, this does not mean you cannot, there's something about it. If someone breaches your product, you have to go to court and defend yourself. This does not, there's some legal term which then made me wonder, then why come for the copyright certificate? Because it says this does not preclude you from going to court and defending your work or something like that. So that is something that I would like some light on. And the last point is that in many ways I think as Kenyans, as East Africans, we are our own worst enemies. We don't watch our movies, we don't watch our products, because when we talk about value, you value, what is the value of something? Value of something is, it's resale. What do you fetch, what does it fetch at the market? So if you go to a bank and they tell you, how much are you going to get from this film? And you probably don't know. So, for instance, if you do a film and take it out to the market, will 200,000-300,000 Kenyans go to that movie and watch and pay 200 shillings to watch your movie? Then that way you're able to tell the bank, I'm expecting 300,000 people to come, watch my film, I'll make 40 million shillings out of it, and I'll pay back your loan that you gave me to develop the film. Very simple example, the Obamas were paid $60 million in advance of Michelle's book. She had not even written anything, and they were paid $60 million. Why? Because the publishers attached a value to that. Why? Because people will buy that book. 10 million have already been sold so far. So I think the discussion should be driving people towards, can Kenyans go and watch a film that has premiered and pay 200-300 shillings so that you, the producer, the writer, the DOP, can make some money out of it? I think that is a discussion we should be having so that there is end market value. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I beg we wrap it there. And thank you very much for the engagement. Josephine mentioned that if anyone has any question, we'll still be lingering out there for a while, and then you can make use of us. Sawa? Thank you very much for your engagement, and thank you very much.
Maybe we can just respond to the two questions quickly, but unfortunately we have to end at this point because of time. We started in late and another session is just about to begin. So perhaps you can just quickly respond to the two questions, and then any other questions, we are still around, so feel free to approach us and we can have the conversation going on. So someone mentioned the Kenya Film Commission and the new mandate. To respond to that, the Commission is well aware of that. It's already making efforts to come up with a certification program, and just for your information, that's even in our performance contract. So it's something that is ongoing and it will be of benefit in the industry. And matters to deal with the film policy, again, this is something that is being reviewed. We are very much aware it's an old law, but there are ongoing discussions and even engagements with the creatives in the industry.
Okay, and I will respond to his question on the copyright certificate that has the disclaimer. I will respond by asking you a question. If you have land, a piece of land somewhere, and you have title to it, and maybe the land is in Kakamega, and you live here in Nairobi, you've not gone to that land for the last 1 year. The day you go there, you find somebody has erected a hut. Does the land title deed that you have, per se, as in the fact that you have the title deed, does it prevent a squatter from going to your land? It doesn't. But the fact that you have it, you have an upper hand when you go to court. You say, this guy has come to my land, has trespassed on my land, and he has built a house on it, yet I'm the one who has the title. So it's the same thing with copyright. It will not prevent, you have done your movie, and it's selling, but somebody has infringed and is selling pirate copies in maybe in Tanzania. The fact that you have the copyright certificate will not prevent somebody from pirating your movie or your film. But if you, with that certificate, when you go to court, you have an upper hand. So that is what the disclaimer means. It's not like now when you have it, it protects you from copyright infringement. So that is basically what it means. I hope you are clear with that.
Thank you very much.